In my view, AI-related uses of personal information do not necessarily change the fundamentals about regulation or the best practices that organizations should follow. In many ways, I would argue, is a tool, and the use of the personal information is what we should really be focusing on. So why an organization is using personal information. So AI as a tool becomes a way that organizations can achieve greater scale, so they can do much more and they can do it much faster, which means that the potential harms can also be greater and can also be faster. Another really interesting point about AI relates to explainability. Many times, especially with large language models, organizations may struggle to explain how the model reached the conclusion that it did. But that sort of explainability is a key part of privacy regulations, being able to show what is happening to one's personal information. And that law still applies, even when we talk about AI. International collaboration is incredibly important. I would argue that most problems that we face involving technology, and especially involving the internet, do not stop at the border. So they are not limited to a single jurisdiction. And in order to get to the root cause of what's actually causing the harm to the individuals, we need to be able to reach into another jurisdiction. So it's incredibly important that organizations, particularly regulators, work together to try to solve these problems across borders. There are a number of mechanisms for doing that, things like the Global Privacy Enforcement Network or the Global Privacy Assembly's International Enforcement Working Group. So regulators have tools available for them. I would argue that for small jurisdictions and jurisdictions in the global south, it's especially important because it helps us to work together with a variety of different jurisdictions, and it helps us to show that we're not being unreasonable. I feel like there is often a concern that businesses may choose not to operate in a jurisdiction if they feel like the regulator is being unreasonable. But when we're working together with our international colleagues and we're all speaking with one voice, it takes away that concern. I would argue that we already have a bit of a global standard in that all privacy laws have this common lineage, I would say. There are certain foundational documents that have really echoed through time, especially over the last 7 years. So privacy as an aspect of the United Nations Convention on Human Rights, or in the 1981 OECD privacy principles. We see lots of variations of those principles throughout time. And what that means is that even if our law may have some differences, it may have some unique aspects to it, the core concepts are the same. And so we can take lessons that have been learned in one place and apply them somewhere else. I would see something of a common law. I would love to see more of it, of course, but I do think there is something of a common law that is starting to emerge around privacy rules and regulation as we see these laws with a lot of similarities, as we see jurisdictions coming to similar conclusions on best practices. I think that's one of the fundamental connections that we all have, is we're trying to mitigate risk. And we're trying to identify what's the risk of harm to an individual and what controls we need to put in place in order to prevent that risk. And from place to place and jurisdiction to jurisdiction, a lot of the risks are the same. I think that's a huge opportunity for us to start building consistency and thinking about risk as our kind of Rosetta Stone that we can use to communicate between all of these different jurisdictions. Basically, people should expect a conversation that talks about big picture issues like we've done on this call, but also gets into practical tips and real world examples for how to do things. I think that's really important to say when you're sitting at your desk trying to accomplish a certain goal, how do you actually do it? And we want to give people those real world tips. Another aspect that I'm sure that you'll get some of is the practicalities of talking about the return on investment of privacy programs. Privacy is not a cost center in organizations, but it's actually an opportunity to gain a return on investment. So that's a great topic for us to go down into.